Sule! Today, Zach has challenged me to recap Brandon Sanderson's standalone novel, WARBREAKER. I have to finish explaining it in 10 minutes or less, or I'll have to paint the Mona Lisa with only shades of red. Subscribe if you want to see that happen. Let's get started.
It's the story in 10 minutes.
This story takes place on the planet Nalthis and centers around growing tensions between the little bitty kingdom Idris and the big daddy kingdom Hallandra. In the coolest prologue sequence of any Sanderson book ever, we meet our first POV, Vasher the priest puncher. Don't worry, he's a good guy. This grumpy boy breathes on some straw and gives us the command to fetch keys. See, Vasher is what's called an awakener. So like every person from Nalthis is born with a biochromatic breath, and they can choose to give it away to others with a very clear command. My life to yours, my breath become yours. Wait, can I have that back? Give it back! After collecting enough of these breaths in a totally morally upstanding way, an awakener can make objects come to life, issuing them simple commands. Anyway, the straw comes back with some keys, and Vasher goes to find his name twin, Vahar. He finds the man chained up for being naughty with his whittle evolution. Vasher then uses friendly extortion, because he's a good guy, to take Vahar's bajillion breaths. In exchange, he very kindly unalives the revolutionary. Pure profit, baby! Vasher then escapes. But wait! His talking sword was taken by the guards. Since this sword is his only true friend, Vasher goes to retrieve it. He finds all of the guards unalived with the sword sticking out of one's chest while still in its sheath. That's strange, right? This talking black sword is called Nightblood, and he wants to destroy evil. And if an evil person ever holds the blade, they gain a compulsion to unalive everyone around them before doing the same to themselves. Because he's a good sword? Our story proper starts in Idris, where we're placed in the POV of the youngest and most useless princess, Ciri, riding home on a horse with a pretty flower. This is an issue because her people hate anything that isn't beige. Their god, the god of colors, Austria god of colors, forbids ostentation. King Dedelin is in an important meeting about that one time 20 years ago that he kinda maybe sorta promised the god king of Hallandren to send him his daughter on her 22nd birthday to get hitched. Hallandren seems close to declaring war on Idris at this point, so the poor judgment moment is gonna stick here. The king loves his eldest daughter, Vivenna, more than the other two, but the contract was written based on her birthday. Thankfully, he didn't specify which daughter he would send. So Ciri, who is completely untrained and underprepared, gets sent instead, because daddy issues make a story much more fun. Neither sister is happy about this decision, and nobody knows how Hallandren will respond to the bait and switch. Now that Vivenna feels purposeless and Ciri has to shack up with an evil god, Dedelin can rest easy. Nice one, Dad. Moving over to Hallandren, we meet a new POV character, Lightsong the Bold. He is one of the gods in the Hallandren Court of Gods. He's not the God King, that's a different god in the Court of Gods. In fact, this court has many gods in it, and they help to rule Hallandren under the God King. There is a twist though with Lightsong, as he does not believe in his own religion. See, Lightsong and the other gods are returned, people who have died, but then were brought back to life with a single powerful breath. The returned will again die if they're not provided at least one breath per week. This is where the weird religion part comes in, as the gods will reverse tithe people for their breath. Don't worry, people don't always pass away when they give their breath. They just become gross. Those gross little drabby little drabs. Lightsong can't remember his past life, and he can't remember why he can't remember his past life, but this is normal for the returned. He does have a dream about a boat on a red ocean that he thinks are related. He also has an a high priest that he lovingly calls Scoot. Scoot! Because of how he looks when he walks with his long robes. Scoot! Scoot! Won't tell Lightsong about his past life, per the rules, and this upsets the god. Ciri arrives at the tropical capital of Hallandren to tell her, and is greeted by thousands of lifeless soldiers. These creatures are deceased people who have been awakened. Cute! They typically have a password that one must state before giving them orders, but are otherwise pretty reliable when giving commands, and pretty reliable at killing things. Oh yeah, the Idrians think that these are heretical abominations, and that does not get Ciri in the mood for her special time with God. The princess is received by the God King's high priest Trelides.
Trelides nuts.
He informs her that the God King is too godly and kingly for a wedding ceremony, and then sends her directly to his castle. Ciri is then bathed by servants. This old guy named Bluefingers and a little boy walk in on Ciri bathing. Ciri is embarrassed by her new friends, but Bluefingers assures her that his station is low enough that he can watch her bathe. Okay. After being made up and given a gown, she is sent to try to give the God King an heir. I am not going to explain that process to you. Upon entering the room, she sits on the floor undressed for 4 hours and falls asleep. The God King does nothing with this. Lightsong attends the wedding celebration and he is visited by another god. Well, a goddess that is. Lusciously curvaceous, supple, slim yet busty, unnaturally voluptuous with perfect legs. Brandon, are you okay? They flirt with each other, but Lightsong rejects her offer to have some fun. He didn't want to sit on a cold stone floor for 4 hours, I guess. We find out that this goddess, named Blushweaver, is in favor of going to war with Idris, and Lightsong has no appetite for politics. Ciri wakes up to find the God King gone. He didn't even leave his number, rude. Bluefingers tells Ciri that she can do whatever she wants, but she must stay in the castle. Ciri's a free spirit, and she's extremely annoyed at this. We then flash over to our final POV character, Ciri's eldest sister, Vivenna. She's also into Teller now with her friend Parlin. They're looking for an Idrian spy named Lemix. One thing to note about Vivenna. She hates Hallandren and is extremely prejudiced against them. The pair are eventually found by two mercenaries, Denth and Tonk Fa. They joke about being there to kill her, but quickly reveal that they work for Lemix and bring her to the spy. Lemix is now very ill, definitely not suspicious, and Vivenna learns that he's acquired a lot of breath through extorting her own country. Vivenna is appalled because Idrians are breath prudes, and having more than one is icky. Before she gets the chance to preach, Lemix grabs her arm and speaks the command words to give Vivenna all of his breath without her consent. Sleepy time comes, and Ciri is about to enter the God King's chamber. Bluefinger gives her a cryptic warning to be careful. He does not expand. It's been multiple nights at this point, and Ciri is fed up with kneeling naked on the floor. She snaps and tells the God King to get on with it. The God King does nothing. She decides to stare him in the eyes, and again, nothing. She has just acquired like 20 death penalties from her actions, but he just leaves again. Ciri falls asleep in his, well, I guess their bed after their first marital fight. Lightsong is spending his day listening to people ask him to die. Well, they technically want Lightsong's godly breath as it has the ability to heal upon being given. Of course, this would unalive him, so that's kinda lame. After dismissing an ill child, he questions Scoot about their religion, the iridescent tones. The priest then explains the god's own religion to him, but Lightsong still isn't convinced. Vivenna learns that Denth and the man whose name is just really two weird sounds were paid in advance to continue working for her. She is disgusted by the fact that she has slutty breath now, but there's no good option for getting rid of it, so she decides to keep it. But doggone it, she won't use it, right? She then reveals her true goal for being in Teteller, to rescue her little sister Ciri from the evil tyrannical God King. If only she knew. Ciri is then presented to the court of gods, and all of the important people in Teteller are summoned. The new queen is excited to get to leave the palace, and is thrilled to wear one of the new dresses offered to her. Lightsong is there with Blushweaver as the goddess attempts to recruit him to her cause of going to war. You see, Lightsong has unique access among the gods to command a quarter of Teteller's lifeless army, and Blushweaver does not. Who's voluptuous now? Blushweaver's goal is to gain control of the entire army so that she can have the most sway when Teteller goes to war. Lightsong doesn't want war. Vivenna shows up with Parlin and is saddened by Ciri being forced to wear a low-cut dress. If only she knew. Finally, the God King shows up, bending all the color around him in his radiant glory. Ciri remarks on how young and hot the God King looks, and questions Bluefingers about his light-bending ability. Turns out, the God King has a whole trove of breath that has been passed down since Peacegiver gave it to the first God King. It was around that time when Ciri's ancestors, the royal line, were driven out of Hallandren and into Idris during the Many War. Bluefingers also reveals that he is from Pongkal and does not worship the God King. While in the crowd, Vivenna notices a man watching her with a lot of slutty breath, and she wants to leave. The amount of breath Vivenna has allows her to vibe check people. She can see how much breath they have and get a spidey sense for when people are staring at her. In spite of the creep, she decides to stay anyway and watch the priests debate going to war with Idris. Lightsong and Blushweaver yap while the priests debate, and Blushweaver reveals that she thinks the new Queen Ciri is a trained spy sent to influence the God King. No, she just has daddy issues. The God King's high priest Trelides tells Ciri that she should speed up the baby making process to help prevent war. So romantic. Ciri tells him that she's obviously trying. Trelides tells her she's obviously not, and that he's got people spying on her. Ciri is once again extremely uncomfortable. Lightsong greets Ciri and decides that she is no spy, and Blushweaver is just paranoid. He feels bad for Ciri and believes the politics will chew her up. Vivenna heads for a safe house where she finds Denth and Tonk Fa have destroyed the place looking for Lemix's secret stash. The mercenaries decide to keep working for Vivenna as they figure the money should belong to her anyway. Ciri is back doing her special nighttime thingy, and the God King is still AFK. Rather than being embarrassed at being watched, she decides to jump on the bed and make strange noises to get the priests to stop listening in on them. This magically works. Please don't ask. Vivenna and Denth plot together to sabotage Teteller's supply lines using crime lords. Denth believes that war is inevitable and they might as well hurt Teteller from the inside for now. The third member of the crew, Jules, and her pet lifeless, Claude, enter. Vivenna is disgusted by the lifeless, but the crew are firm that he will be staying. They talk a lot about the grumpy Vasher, who is a very good guy, and Vivenna is pretty sure that he is the one who was watching her earlier. This is apparently not good. You see, Denth and Vasher go way back, and Denth wants to kill him because Vasher killed Denth's friend in a duel. Denth doesn't buy this story because Arsteel was apparently the best duelist alive, and Vasher is kinda mid. The pawn call servant Bluefingers speaks with Ciri, telling her that she should not have a child with the God King. He also mentions that she's in grave danger, but doesn't elaborate in the slightest. Thanks, bro. She does her special music act again before the God King finally decides to interact with her by giving her a children's book. He opens his mouth and reveals that he has no tongue, and Ciri realizes that he's just a puppet for the priests. The poor guy doesn't even know how to read. We finally get a Vasher chapter again. He's heading over to the palace of Mercy Star, one of the other gods. He uses Awakening to knock out some guards and sends a lifeless squirrel to cause some mischief. That's all all he does, but he's still a really good guy. Lightsong is crushing the other gods in a game of Tarachin. We have no idea what this is because, well, Lightsong has no idea what this is, but he's apparently really good at it. Everybody but Lightsong seems to want war, but he keeps having dreams about war and destruction. He goes to find his curvaceous friend to start politicking again, and desires to prevent the war. Vivenna and the mercenaries meet with some crime lords, and things go south quickly. Dent is forced to kill guards with inhuman speed, and they all flee before being stopped by an Adrian man. Vivenna decides that she wants to meet with the Adrians that live in the city to give them hope. Lightsong and Blushweaver go to Mercy Star's palace after hearing about the break-in. The mystery gives Lightsong a strange sense of curiosity. He proceeds to interrogate the servants and decides that the intruder was not an Adrian like everyone seems to believe. Also, the servants are lying to him. First of all, blasphemy. Second of all, why? Ciri tries to check out books from the library, but she has no library cards, so the priests won't let her. She gets extremely frustrated again. Instead, she goes to the God King, where she learns that he never had the talk. Again, I will not be explaining this to you. Everything makes sense now. He's just a grown child. One that's immortal, very tall, with chiseled abs, and literally bends the light around him. What a baby. Vivenna witnesses the mercenaries go to work, setting a building on fire and spilling a carriage full of gold. While she waits for the mercenaries to be done, she learns that Jules is a drab and pities her. Jules goes off on Vivenna, stating that she gave her breath away willingly and to stop being so judgmental. Lightsong performs one of his duties as a god, judging paintings. He really likes one that depicts a sea battle and a black sword. His priest Larimar believes that this is worryingly prophetic, but Lightsong again doesn't buy it. The god then goes back to Mercy Star's palace, where he questions all the witnesses to the break-in again. He determines that there were two intruders, one that didn't kill anybody and one who did kill people. Who could that be? During his investigation, he notices a trapdoor in the palace, which he figures was used for the escape. Lightsong feels a new purpose in life, and he ponders if he was some sort of detective in his past life. But Scoot won't tell him. Vivenna and her gang of rascals meet with some foragers to make documents proving that Hallandren priests are corrupt. She then thinks about sending Parlin back to Idris because he doesn't fit in here, and Dent thinks she has a little crush on him. Ciri and the God King flirt in their clothes for a while, and they land on the topic of how God Kings are supposed to pass on their breath to the next one. After all, you need a tongue to speak the proper command. Vasher is now spying on Vivenna and friends, and his talking sword admits to missing Dent. Oh. Lightsong is busy doing everything. Yeah, Blushweaver walks in on him doing pottery of all things, and he tells her that he's learning about his past self by seeing what he's naturally good at. He's great at detective work, juggling, math, sketching, and for some reason he knows all of the sailing terms. Blushweaver thinks that he's lost his mind, and they go to meet another god to get his lifeless commands. She trades in her political vote for the god's commands, and then reveals that she also received Mercy Star's commands, thanks to Lightsong taking interest in her palace break-in. This means that Blushweaver has control over half the army already, and Lightsong has another quarter. One more to go, I guess. Dent and Vivenna go to the slums to meet the Idrians, where she gets very sad that they have to live among prostitutes and gangs. Dent kindly points out that they are the prostitutes and gangs. Vivenna really needs a reality check. They're interrupted by a lifeless raid, and Vivenna is almost killed before Claude, of all people, rescues her. Ciri decides to play politics, sending a message to Bluefingers that she has information for him. She then meets with Lightsong so that they can listen to the exposition dump given by Hoyd the storyteller. He's an important character and will be in our next summary. Let's summarize this as fast as possible. The first returned Vaux started the royal line in Hallandren. Ciri is a descendant of that line, hence the royal locks she has. Hair that can change color and length at her command and based on her emotions. Later, there were 5 scholars who discovered how to make a lifeless with a single breath. One of the scholars, Kalad, sounds like a nice guy, learned to make even stronger lifeless, called Kalad's Phantoms, which he then used to end the Many War. This war ended in the remnants of the royal line fleeing to Idris, and the returned eventually took control of Hallandren, thus the current predicament. Through this story, Ciri learns that the God Kings only live long enough to produce an heir, and that worries her. While Jules repairs Claude from the fight, Vivenna overhears a security phrase. Vivenna is now open to learning how to use her breath, and Dent explains the basics to her. She then talks with Parlin briefly, who admits to liking Jules, and Vivenna gets jealous, so she did have a crush. She tries to go to bed, but Vasher kidnaps her. Ciri is introspecting when Blushweaver approaches her, telling her to back off her man Lightsong, calling her a slut, and then walking away. She only has one breath. Chill. Ciri is, surprise, surprise, extremely uncomfortable. She chats with Bluefingers and tells him that she's been talking to the God King. This puts her in a powerful position, and he agrees to help them escape the palace if things go wrong. Vivenna is hanging from the ceiling. Vasher makes her hold Nightblood, who then asks if she wants to kill anybody. Obviously, a talking sword is insane, so she drops it. Vasher realizes that this means she cannot be evil since she didn't unalive herself. Vasher then leaves, and Vivenna uses her first ever command to make her restraints untie themselves. She then rushes to her hideout where she finds Denth and funny name Guy with the corpse of her old crush Parlin. Turns out the mercenaries were never on her side, and she uses Claude's security phrase to make him attack Denth. During the chaos, Vivenna flees to the slums, back with her people. Ciri and the God King plot their potential escape from the palace, but he isn't convinced that the priests are all bad. They flirt a bit, but the God King still doesn't know how to No, I won't explain it to them. Vivenna decides to lay low for now, putting all of her breath in her shawl so that she can't be found by Vasher or Denth. She lives here for a while, suffering starvation and beatings, and even briefly considers becoming a prostitute. Those breaths really do change a person. She finally understands her people's conditions. She eventually is found by Vasher. He's a good dude, and he kidnaps her again. Lightsong had a bad dream about friends dying and the God King crying. He then decides to go find the god with the final quarter of the lifeless army, Allmother. Oh yeah, she hates him. After some verbal sparring, Lightsong gives her the commands to his army. She then, shockingly, gives him her own commands. Well, now that would give Lightsong half and Blushweaver half. How interesting. Vivenna wakes up a week later and Vasher did not bind her this time. She takes her breath back from her shawl and is brought back to health quickly. Vasher explains that she was duped by Denth, and this whole time he was using her to accelerate the war between Hallandren and Idris. Vivenna agrees to help Vasher try to prevent the war. See? Good dude. Ciri and the God King talk and they believe that the God King is actually just a normal return that's being held by the priests. They're just waiting for Ciri to get pregnant so they can make the switch. All this baby talk gives them baby fever. Biology takes over and they finally jump on the bed together. At this moment, Lightsong has a dream of Teteleri on fire, the God King dying, and a black sword. Vivenna keeps training her awakening commands, and Vasher's helping her now. Good dude. He then gives a shockingly intelligent lecture about biochromatic breath. A very scholarly lecture? Lightsong decides that he'll change Allmother's lifeless security phrase, officially giving him sole access to that half of the army. Ciri and the God King confess their love for each other. And he decides that he wants to take control of his government. They decide to try to recruit Lightsong to help assert authority over the priests, since the God King can't speak. Vasher and Vivenna learn that the carriage of gold that was spilled by the mercenaries wasn't actually a distraction. It was Denth's target all along. He stole an influential priest's daughter to get him to change from anti-war to pro-war. They find the girl in a cage, and Vasher appears to grow in size as he rage fights the guards. Yes, Vasher actually is a good dude, and Vivenna chalks the size-growing thing to a trick of the light. Lightsong and Blushweaver attend the final debate for the decision to go to war. He refuses to share his commands with Blushweaver, shocking, and they notice that the God King and Ciri are oddly absent. It turns out that Ciri was taken by the priests, who will announce her pregnancy to the kingdom and keep her hidden. The gods all vote to go to war, but not Lightsong. He abstains, delaying the final decision. Vasher reminisces on the creation of Nightblood. He needed a measly 1,000 breaths to create him and give him the command destroy evil, thus birthed the hungriest sword in all the lands. He attempts to find the God King, but Denth shows up and takes him captive. Lightsong decides to act. He sneaks into Mercy Star's palace and enters that trap door he found. They learn that the underground tunnel connects all of the palace to the lifeless barracks. They hear Blushweaver scream and Lightsong runs to aid. He is unfortunately not a good swordsman and is quickly captured by the God King's servants. Larimar is pissed and blames Lightsong for always being a fool. He then reveals that Lightsong was simply an accountant in his old life, and this shocks Lightsong. The priest asks Lightsong for his command phrases, but he refuses. They then unalive Blushweaver. This shocks Lightsong even more. Vivenna decides to seek out Vasher, who is currently being tortured by Denth. On her way, she finds Nightblood, who was thrown away by silly name guy. Nightblood ended up in the hands of a fisherman who took it to shore, who then used it to unalive everybody in the vicinity before unaliving himself. I guess they were all evil. Trelides takes Ciri to meet with the God King, and he seems to be clueless about what is going on. There was an attack on the palace, but apparently the God King's priests are not the bad guys here. Bluefingers arrives to fulfill his promise to Ciri and begins to take them to safety. Then Ciri has a brain blast moment. The priests aren't attacking the palace. It's the dang pawn call. Bluefingers is the real villain, that little pervert. Turns out the priests had no intention of unaliving the God King after the transition. They were just gonna send him and Ciri into hiding. The lifeless attacking the palace find them and unalive Trelides, and the other priests, while Ciri and the God King are taken by Bluefingers. Bluefingers gives his villain monologue, describing how the pawn call will get their revenge on Hallandren by sending the entire army to invade Idris, crippling both nations before seizing the throne for themselves. Vivenna finds Vasher and gives him her breath and Nightblood. A command forces Tonk Fo's cloak to attack Denth, and Vasher is thrown out the window in the process. Defenestration is cool. On the ground, 50 lifeless engage Vasher, and he finally unsheaths Nightblood fully to kill all 50 of them. Unfortunately, during this, Nightblood consumed almost all of Vasher's breath, causing him to throw the sword away. Just then, Denth appears and challenges Vasher to a duel. The God King is thrown into a cell by Lightsong. Lightsong learned that Scoot was his brother, and before he returned, he lost his life on a boat by trying to save Scoot's daughter from drowning. He finally believes that he was returned to life for a reason, and it was for this very moment. Lightsong the Bold gives up his divine breath to heal the king's tongue. This is the second time he gave up his life for another person. How can you not love the guy? Vasher is getting bodied in this duel, and Denth refuses to believe that Vasher ever beat Arsteel. He had to have used a dirty trick. Just then, Vasher uses a dirty trick. He gives all of his breath away to Denth, which stuns him for just enough time for Vasher to fatally wound him. It turns out nobody expects somebody to would willingly give their breath away during a battle. And now Death knows how Vasher beat Arsteel. Ciri's about to be unalived by Bluefingers, who's gonna make her death look like a Hallandren cult sacrifice. This would surely provoke the Idrians into a losing war. Before he can succeed, the God King arrives to casually awaken Cloth to restrain Bluefingers. He can now talk, and he means business. Vasher and Vivenna contemplate how to stop the Lifeless army from destroying Idris. Vasher thinks it's hopeless, but Nightblood has a suggestion, using Kalad's phantoms. What? Vasher reluctantly agrees, but demands to speak to the God King first. They find the God King and Ciri, and the two princesses reunite and hug each other. Aww. Vasher speaks to the God King and reveals that he himself is a returned. He grows in size and changes his appearance, revealing that all returned have the capacity to do this. The royal locks that Ciri and Vivenna have are related to this ability. It turns out Vasher is both Kalad and Peacegiver. Whoa, big reveal! They must all be good guys. He was also one of the 5 scholars, along with Denth and Arsteel. Also, it turns out that the Lifeless Claude was actually Arsteel the whole time. Let's stay on track though. The God King bows to Vasher, as he was the one to bestow the gift of breath to the first God King. He agrees to give the God King control of Kalad's phantoms. They are 1,000 massive stone statues with human bones inside. They are awakened and only need to be commanded. This would surely annihilate the army of Lifeless, but at the cost of revealing this great power to the world once again. In the epilogue, Vivenna decides that she cannot return to the life of a princess. She doesn't know who she is anymore, but she wants to figure it out alongside Vasher. She asks him who he truly is, and he responds that he has many names. Peacegiver, Talaxin. He was given a name, however, when he first returned. Warbreaker the Peaceful. Roll credits. I guess this was just a happy little accident. Just like you subscribing. Kolo?